February 24th, 1978. A mountain road disappears beneath fresh snow in Northern California. The search team expects to find a stranded vehicle, maybe a family waiting for help, maybe tire tracks leading back toward civilization. Instead, they discover something that makes no sense. A turquoise 1969 Mercury Montego sits silently on an isolated Forest Service road, nearly 8,000 feet above sea level. The driver's door is unlocked. One window is rolled down. The keys are gone, but the car is perfectly capable of starting. It isn't stuck. It isn't damaged. It isn't out of fuel. It could have driven away. Yet whoever was inside abandoned it. Nearby, faint footprints vanish into the untouched snow. Not back toward the highway. Not toward safety. They lead deeper into the freezing darkness of the Sierra Nevada mountains. 5 men walked away from a perfectly functioning car, and only one would be found alive long enough to explain nothing. To this day, the mystery remains known as the Yuba County Five. One of America's most disturbing unexplained disappearances. The story begins in Chico, California. The 5 friends were all members of a local program for adults with mild intellectual disabilities and mental health challenges. Despite their differences, they shared a close bond built around one passion: basketball. 24-year-old Jack Madruga was the oldest of the group. Quiet, dependable, and considered an excellent driver, he treated his prized Mercury Montego with extraordinary care. Friends often joked that no one was allowed to eat inside his car. Beside him was Bill Sterling, 29, cheerful and easygoing. Ted Weiher, 32, lived with his parents and was known for his gentle nature. He struggled with intellectual disabilities, but maintained a strict routine and depended heavily on familiar surroundings. 24-year-old Jack Hewitt was energetic and excited about the future. The 5th man was 25-year-old Gary Mathias. Gary was different. Unlike the others, he had served in the U.S. Army. He was physically capable, intelligent, and experienced outdoors, but he also lived with schizophrenia. Thanks to medication, he had been stable for years, holding jobs and functioning well in everyday life. However, when he stopped taking his medication, he could become paranoid or experience hallucinations. According to those who knew him, Gary had been doing well. Nothing suggested what was about to happen. On February 24th, the 5 friends drove from Yuba City to Chico to watch a college basketball game. The evening was filled with excitement. The next morning, they were scheduled to play in a Special Olympics basketball tournament. Their families later described them as almost obsessed with making that game. Their uniforms were laid out. Their shoes were ready. Some had even gone to bed early the previous night to make sure they were rested. Missing the tournament was simply unthinkable. After the game ended around 10 p.m., the group stopped at a convenience store. Receipts and witnesses confirmed they purchased snacks, milk, soda, and candy. Nothing appeared unusual. They laughed. They talked. Then they climbed back into the Mercury Montego and disappeared. When the men failed to return home that night, concern spread quickly. By morning, every family was searching. The first assumption was simple. Maybe the car had broken down. Maybe they had stayed with friends. But as hours turned into days, hope slowly gave way to fear. Then investigators received an astonishing report. A man named Joseph Shawns later claimed he had suffered a mild heart attack after his own car became stuck on the same mountain road that night. While waiting for help, he reported seeing headlights approaching. According to Shawns, a group of men stopped nearby. He shouted for assistance. Instead of helping, he claimed the lights suddenly disappeared. His story has remained controversial for decades. Some investigators questioned whether his medical condition affected his memory. Others wondered if he had unknowingly witnessed the 5 men during their final known hours. No one knows. Days later, helicopters searching the mountains spotted something almost impossible: Jack Madruga's Mercury Montego. It sat abandoned nearly 70 miles away from the route the men should have taken home. The location puzzled everyone. There was no reason for the group to be there. To reach that road, they would have needed to ignore multiple highway turns leading safely back to Yuba City and instead drive higher into dangerous mountain terrain. Even stranger, the car wasn't trapped. Investigators later determined that with only minimal effort, it likely could have been driven away. Inside the vehicle were jackets, food wrappers, maps, and personal belongings. Nothing suggested violence. Nothing suggested a struggle. It looked as though the men had simply decided to walk. Search teams followed tracks leading away from the vehicle. Snowstorms had erased much of the evidence, but one conclusion became unavoidable. The five friends had voluntarily left the safety of the car and headed into freezing wilderness during the middle of the night. Temperatures dropped well below freezing. Without proper winter clothing, survival would have been measured in hours. Months passed. Spring finally melted enough snow to resume the search. Then, on June 4th, nearly 4 months after the disappearance, a group of motorcycle riders made a grim discovery. Hidden deep within the forest stood an abandoned Forest Service trailer. Inside lay the body of Ted Wire. The scene investigators encountered remains one of the most haunting in modern criminal history. Ted had been carefully wrapped from head to toe in blankets. Someone had tucked the sheets around his body almost as though they were trying to keep him warm. His beard had grown dramatically, showing he had survived for weeks after entering the trailer. The medical examiner estimated Ted had lived somewhere between 8 and 13 weeks. Then came the detail that transformed the case from tragic to deeply disturbing. Inside the trailer was enough emergency food to keep several people alive. Military survival rations, canned food, supplies. There was also a large propane heating system, fuel, matches, everything needed to survive the winter. Yet almost none of it had been used. Many of the food lockers remained unopened. Some required only a simple twist to access. The propane system was functional, but it had never been turned on. Ted eventually died from starvation and hypothermia. Not because resources were unavailable, because, for reasons no one has ever understood, he never used them. Investigators also found evidence suggesting at least one other person had been inside the trailer after Ted arrived. Several blankets had been disturbed. A window had been broken for access. Empty food containers indicated someone had eaten there. But whoever that person was, they vanished. Nearby, searchers found the remains of Jack Hewitt. His skeletal body lay roughly 2 miles from the trailer. Not far away were pieces of Bill Sterling's bones, scattered by wildlife. Jack Madruga's remains were discovered even farther back, closer to where the Mercury Montego had been abandoned. His body suggested he had died from exposure long before reaching the trailer. Only one member of the group was never found: Gary Mathias. The strongest outdoorsman, the experienced Army veteran, the man who arguably had the greatest chance of surviving. He disappeared completely. No confirmed remains, no confirmed sightings, nothing. His tennis shoes were found inside the trailer. Curiously, Ted was wearing Gary's leather shoes. This suggests Gary may have reached the trailer alive, changed footwear with Ted, and left again for reasons unknown. If that happened, where did he go? And why? Over the decades, investigators have debated several possible explanations. The first theory is simple disorientation. Perhaps the men became lost after accidentally taking the wrong highway. Darkness, snow, and unfamiliar roads may have convinced them they were trapped. Once they left the car, panic and freezing temperatures made every decision worse than the last. This theory explains the abandoned vehicle, but it struggles to explain why they ignored a working car that offered shelter from the wind. The second theory involves collective panic. Psychologists have suggested that fear can spread rapidly through groups. If one person became convinced they needed to leave immediately, others may have followed without fully understanding the danger. The group trusted one another deeply. In a terrifying situation, they may have stayed together simply because separating felt even more dangerous. There is no evidence proving this happened, but investigators continue to consider it a possibility. The third and perhaps most controversial theory centers on Gary Mathias. Because Gary had previously experienced psychotic episodes before receiving successful treatment, some have wondered whether he suffered a mental health crisis that night. Could paranoia have convinced him the group was in danger? Could he have insisted they continue climbing into the mountains? Supporters of this theory note that Gary possessed the strongest survival skills and may have taken charge. However, there is no evidence that Gary had stopped taking his medication before the trip. Family members and those close to him consistently stated he appeared stable and responsible in the days leading up to the disappearance. Without direct evidence, investigators have never concluded that Gary caused the tragedy. Another lingering question remains impossible to answer. Did the five men encounter someone else that night? Someone who frightened them enough to abandon the car? Despite decades of investigation, no credible evidence has ever established the involvement of another person. No signs of violence, no robbery, no confirmed witnesses, only unanswered questions. Perhaps the most unsettling detail is not where the men were found. It is what they left behind. A working car, shelter, supplies, warmth, and later, a trailer stocked with food, blankets, and fuel that could have kept Ted Wire alive until rescue arrived. The Yuba County Five challenge one of our deepest assumptions about survival. We like to believe that in a crisis, human beings make rational decisions, that we naturally move toward safety, that obvious choices remain obvious under fear. But history repeatedly shows something different. Exhaustion, confusion, cold, isolation. These forces can quietly dismantle judgment, turning simple decisions into fatal ones. Nearly 50 years later, investigators still cannot answer the most important question. Why did five men leave safety behind and continue walking into a mountain that offered almost no chance of survival? Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't hidden somewhere in the Sierra Nevada. Perhaps it's hidden inside the human mind itself. Because when fear takes control, how certain can any of us be that we would choose the right path before the darkness closes in?